well-regulated militia be necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. I'm glad that you've joined us today. It is a solemn anniversary. 19 years ago, terror struck in the United States. We're going to talk about one of the many heroes of that day a little bit later on in the program. Also joining us on the show today, Erich Pratt from Gun Owners of America, talking about the upcoming election and some of the races for Congress that are going to be vitally important, and races where gun owners can have a significant impact. There are going to be some of these congressional districts that are safely blue. There are going to be others that are safely red, but there are a number of opportunities, I think, for pro-Second Amendment voices to actually take a seat in Congress, replacing some anti-gun candidates, or in some cases, maybe even to oust some anti-gun members of Congress. I talked on Bearing Arms yesterday. We had a story, NRA's Political Victory Fund, out with their candidate ratings for 2020, and there is only one A-plus rated Democrat in Congress right now. One. Colin Peterson, Democrat from Minnesota, who first took office in 1991, won election in the 1990 elections, was able to survive the red wave of, 94 after the Clinton-Biden gun ban was put into effect. He actually said a couple of years ago that I think the statement was, if I hear the phrase common sense gun control one more time, I'm going to throw up, something like that. He is squaring off against an A-rated Republican, but Colin Peterson getting the NRA's endorsement there in that Minnesota congressional district. Again, unfortunately, there just aren't that many pro-gun Democrats around anymore. And as somebody who believes that the Second Amendment is safer and more secure when it is a nonpartisan issue, believe me, I would love to see more pro-gun Democrats out there. I would love to go to the polls in November and really have a difficult choice to make between two candidates. All right, well, they're both great on the Second Amendment. And then I could maybe start to look at other issues. Unfortunately, that's not the case in Virginia's 5th congressional district, probably not the case in your congressional district, and that's one of the other things we'll talk with Erich Pratt about. What can we do, and is there any chance of the Democrats, at least some, maybe a wing of the Democrat Party, if not embracing our right to keep and bear arms, perhaps rejecting these old-school gun control plans that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and others want to implement all across the country? Take a look and a listen. Hey, Erich, thanks so much for coming on the program, sir. It's good to talk with you today.
Well, you're very welcome. So glad to be with you, Cam.
Absolutely. Listen, I know we're past Labor Day. We are now in the thick of the election season. I mean, it feels like it's been going on for like 5 years now, but we're in the home stretch, and so much attention right now is focused on the top of the ticket with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and that is incredibly important for gun owners. Make no mistake. But we also have 435 members of Congress. We've got a third of the U.S. Senate that is up for election in November. And this is incredibly consequential for gun owners as well, right?
Absolutely. In fact, you could argue that it's perhaps even more important, all these races at the congressional and the Senate level. And that's not taking anything away from the presidential level, but obviously, the Senate is going to be counted on to stop things with filibuster or affirm judges. So, these races are super, super important to gun owners.
Absolutely. And, listen, I mean, if we lose the Senate, the Democrats have already told us they're probably going to axe the filibuster. And a bare minimum 51 votes would be enough to ram through any gun control proposals that the Democrats want. We've already seen the House pass quote unquote universal background checks. We've already heard that they want to go after our semi-automatic rifles. So these races really are critically important. And I know that Gun Owners of America is getting involved in a lot of these races. You were recently out in Western Colorado and GOA endorsed Lauren Boebert for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District in Colorado.
Yeah, she's a great candidate. She's an interesting story. She owns a restaurant in Rifle, Colorado, which I'm told is the only city in the country named after a gun. But at her restaurant, she and the waitresses there open carry. She is passionate about our Second Amendment rights. In fact, people may remember after Beto O'Rourke said, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s and your AK-47s. Well, she drove to one of his campaign events when he came to Colorado, and she got up in his face and told him, hell no, you aren't taking our guns. I mean, she is tenacious. And just to give you an example of that, she defeated a sitting incumbent in the primary, which is something that has not been done for almost 50 years in Colorado.
Wow.
She is the type of candidate who is one in a million, really. I mean, she's actually read the Constitution for herself, and she tells people that when she's, out stumping and speaking in front of crowds. She's very passionate about the Constitution and the Second Amendment. So, I would tell people, look, if your congressman stinks, she's the one that you can, quote unquote, adopt the congressman, so to speak. You can give to her campaign, right? Help her get elected. In fact, people could go to laurenforcolorado.com. Helping her win is very doable. She's a Republican who's in a Republican district, but she's going against someone who was in the state legislature, so obviously has a lot of name ID. But let me tell you, there's a huge difference between the two. Her opponent has supported gun bans, registration, and gun-free zones. Lauren is opposed to all those, and she will be the one going toe-to-toe with AOC and getting in her face and pushing the pro-gun agenda.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to talk with Lauren Boebert a couple of times, and you're right. I mean, she is, first of all, she's a pistol. I know she lives in Rifle, Colorado, but she is a pistol. And, her story is so incredible. She talks about how when she grew up, her mom was on welfare. They were on public assistance. And she describes, I don't know if she talked to you about this, but she talked about her first job at McDonald's and what it felt like to get that paycheck and to have earned that money, and how that really sort of inculcated a sense of individual responsibility in her life. And since then, as you say, she's gone on to open up her own business. She's a small business owner. She is certainly a fierce defender of the Second Amendment. And this district is interesting because, as you say, this was a quote unquote safe seat for Republicans, theoretically. But Boebert was not happy with the Republican that had been there for, I think, 5 terms. I think he'd been there for a decade in Congress. And she said, he just didn't really do anything. He wasn't out there actively fighting for the rights of the constituents in his district. She felt like Coloradans in the 3rd District deserved better. She didn't see anybody else stepping up to do the job, so she decided that she would do it. She won that nomination, defeating the incumbent in the primary. And yeah, I think this is going to be a race to watch, because Democrats, I think, are terrified of Lauren Boebert. Gun control groups absolutely despise her. So they're, trying to pour in some resources to make this as competitive as possible, and maybe try to score an upset in November. We've also got in the Western states a very important Senate seat. We were just talking again about the importance of the Senate. Doing things like being able to block these anti-gun bills. So in Montana, the Senate race is between the incumbent Steve Daines, Governor Steve Bullock, who is, Erich, I mean, he's out there trying to portray himself as some sort of Second Amendment stalwart right now, which is crazy.
Right, and that's exactly how the governor got elected. Yes, for Steve Daines, let me tell you, for GOA, this is the most important race in the Senate, and it's certainly one of the most contested races in the country. And it's as you just mentioned, because his opponent is the sitting governor, so he obviously has a lot of name ID. Both candidates obviously have won statewide races. Montana is somewhat unique because while it's very pro-gun, they will vote for a Democrat who feigns support for the Second Amendment. And that's exactly the case with the governor, who got elected championing gun rights. However, since then, he vetoed constitutional carry. He's come out in support of a semi-auto and magazine ban. He favors red flags, age restrictions. He's really come out and shown his true colors. So on the one hand, you would think that would give Daines the advantage, because again, it is a very pro-gun state. Daines, not only is he pro-gun, he is a pro-gun leader. He has co-sponsored legislation like concealed carry, reciprocity. He voted to repeal Obama gun control when that came up for a vote early in 2017. He supported the pro-gun judges that Trump has nominated, like Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. But I think even more importantly, Daines has opposed the so-called gun control light that's been supported by Republicans. those who followed UA might remember the fixed NICS, which would result in more veterans and seniors being thrown into the NICS system. Well, most Republicans supported that along with all the Democrats, but Daines voted no on that. I tell you, Cam, if we had 10 more senators like Daines, it would be maybe even 5 more. It would be a totally different Senate. But all to say, we cannot lose him to a closet anti-gunner who obviously is no longer in the closet. I mean, Bullock has made his views clear. But yeah, this is a really key race that we have to retain Steve Daines in the Senate.
Another key Senate race where you talk about retaining a pro-Second Amendment senator out in Arizona, Martha McSally squaring off against Mark Kelly, Gabrielle Gifford's husband, obviously, the co-founder of Giffords. He too is sort of portraying himself as a quote-unquote responsible gun owner just interested in common sense gun safety laws. But you look at the record between Martha McSally and what Mark Kelly would actually want to change in terms of the gun laws that are on the books, the restrictions and the infringements on our right to keep and bear arms that would be coming, likely even introduced or sponsored by Mark Kelly if he were to get elected. This is another key race.
It really is, Cam, and unlike the other races where it involves either maintaining a pro-gun leader or getting a pro-gun leader, and Martha McSally, she's not going to be, your pro-gun leader. She, obviously she's going to follow the pro-gun line most of the time. The real issue is that she's going up, against Mark Kelly, as you pointed out. I mean, if Mark Kelly wins, it would be like having Michael Bloomberg in the Senate. And it would just be absolutely awful because, he, despite trying to, as you were pointing out, toe that so-called reasonable line, he actually supports very draconian gun control restrictions. He's going to support Joe Biden's gun control agenda if Biden gets elected. So I tell you, this is a tough race because McSally, depending on the polls, the average is she's about 11 points behind. And Bloomberg, while he's pumping in $60 million nationally, he's diverted quite a huge chunk of that to Arizona, $5 million for Arizona alone. So, that kind of money could make anybody look attractive. So that's something that, this is a huge race, and this is something that gun owners really, it's important for us to be involved in this race just simply to get Mark Kelly defeated.
Yeah. In my home state of Virginia, the 7th Congressional District, this is an interesting district. This was at one point Eric Cantor's district, then he was primaried by Dave Pratt, who was defeated in the Blue Wave in 2018 by Abigail Spanberger, who, by the way, Eric, she's very, very cautious about talking about gun control. She's backed, the anti-gun agenda of Nancy Pelosi, but she doesn't talk about it on her campaign website, doesn't talk about gun control on the campaign trail, tries to portray herself again as this, very moderate voice, almost a blue dog Democrat, but she's not. And I think this is a race where gun owners can actually score a pickup. We could not only flip this from, R to D, but we could flip this from an anti-gun to a pro-gun seat because the Republican candidate, Nick Freitas, has been an absolute champion for the right to keep and bear arms in the Virginia state legislature.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, people from all over Virginia are probably very familiar with Nick Freitas because he is really the leader on gun issues in the House of Delegates. When the Democrats launched their blitzkrieg against our gun rights this past year in Virginia, he was the one who led the opposition on the inside. He organized the speakers, the other delegates. He organized the counter amendments. He speaks very powerfully when he takes the floor to speak against an anti-gun bill. In fact, he holds the record for the most watched floor speech in Virginia history. It was actually a couple of years ago where he blistered anti-gun Democrats. It's gotten over 100 million views among the different social media platforms. In fact, if people want to watch it, they can just go on YouTube and search Nick Freitas and speech, and that'll be the first thing that comes up. But here's the thing people need to know about Nick Freitas. He's never cast an anti-Second Amendment vote in his entire time in the House of Delegates, and he's carried countless pieces of legislation to strengthen our Second Amendment rights in Virginia, including constitutional carry, campus carry. He's tough as nails. He's a former Green Beret with 2 Bronze Stars. I tell you what, you know this, Cam. He will truly be a warrior for the Second Amendment when he defeats Abigail Spanberger, and I definitely think it's definitely a winnable seat, as you were mentioning, because it is a conservative district, and even though and that's why obviously Spanberger doesn't want to talk about the issue on her website and in public, even though she does secretly support the entire agenda when it comes to a vote.
Yeah, I think she's actually gone so far as to try to avoid debating Nick Freitas. I don't even think she wants to have a debate, which is kind of extraordinary when you've got an incumbent politician running from actually debating their opponent and running away. That kind of tells you, I think, about how hard she's trying to avoid the Second Amendment as an issue in that district. Because, as you say, this is a conservative district. It is full of a lot of gun owners. We've had, a lot of Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions passed in the 7th Congressional District in various towns and counties. And gun owners absolutely need to be aware, and they need to be involved in that race. Finally, a race out of the Lone Star State of Texas, which might surprise some folks that there'd be a competitive a race for gun owners in Texas. But Michael Bloomberg, listen, you talked about the money that he's pouring into Arizona. He's spending a lot of money in the Lone Star State as well. He's trying to flip the state house and turn that into an anti-gun body. But I think he's also taken a real interest in trying to defeat Congressman Chip Roy. And if you're a political junkie, by the way, you might remember the name of Roy's opponent, Wendy Davis. I didn't even realize that she was still in politics, honestly, Erich, but she's gunning for a seat in Congress now.
She is, yeah. She became famous in the state legislature when she led a filibuster against a pro-life measure, and that's why Democrats love her all around, and she's getting support from all around the country. And obviously, that's a whole separate issue from what we're talking about here. But what gun owners need to know is that Davis, on the gun issue, is the darling of Moms Demand Action, the Giffords Organization, the Brady PAC. She is loved by the anti-gun left. And on the other hand, Chip Roy, who is the sitting congressman, he's sponsored several pro-gun bills. In fact, just yesterday, he got the House Veterans Affairs Committee to hear his bill that he sponsored that would end the current practice where military veterans with PTSD are put into the NICS system if they've had a guardian assigned to handle their finances. So, he is a pro-gun leader. He's a huge supporter of constitutional carry reciprocity. It would be a huge loss if Wendy Davis were to pick up this seat and defeat Chip Roy. And, I would encourage people, we're heavily supporting people like Roy and all these other candidates that we talked about, and people can help out with that, Cam, by going to gunowners.org/victory. And all the funds that go there will help us in helping all these candidates and others to get across the finish line.
That's fantastic. Hey, listen, Erich, one last question before I let you go here. All of these candidates that we've talked about that GOA is backing, they're Republicans. And there's no way to get around it. Now, GOA is not a Republican organization. Gun owners you can find all across the political spectrum. But the Democrat Party has really, truly embraced the anti-gun agenda over the past decade or so. The blue dog Democrats that were elected, in 2005, 2006 with the promise of, I'll support your Second Amendment rights, but I'm going to be, siding with Nancy Pelosi and others on other issues. They're gone. For the most part, there might be one or two left in Congress, but they've been tossed out in large part by their own party, in some cases by pro-gun Republicans who defeated them. I'm one who believes that our Second Amendment rights are going to be stronger and more secure when the right to keep and bear arms is a bipartisan issue, when we find that support on both sides of the aisle. How concerned are you about the direction that the Democrats are taking? And do you see any hope that, we might see the return of pro-gun Democrats, maybe if, some of these Democrats go down to defeat in November?
Yeah, that is an interesting phenomenon. Back in the day, Gun Owners of America used to support pro-gun Democrats. You probably remember Virgil Goode, here in Virginia, and there were many others. And you're absolutely right. They are all gone. And that's been a decision at the top of their party. There was a time when they were trying to get those blue dogs in the more rural areas and have them represent. But Nancy Pelosi, I think, just got so frustrated with them. She has basically given up on them, and so they've taken the hard line. It's in their it's in their agenda. It's in their platform. As long as you have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer running the reins of the Democrat Party, I don't see them turning from that right now. I think they're going to keep the hard line where they're coming after our guns. I mean, who knows what will happen in the future? And you're right. The Second Amendment is not an issue for just Republicans. In fact, I was in, as you just mentioned, I was in Colorado and Lauren Boebert's district, and there's a lot of pro-gun Democrats in that district. And all across the country, there are a lot of pro-gun Democrats. It's just that they don't make it into the Congress, at least not right now. They have in years past, but not right now. But I tell you what the thing that's encouraging is that the gun issue is a strong enough issue because it's a freedom issue, freedom from tyranny, the ability to protect yourself, that people will vote on that issue alone, and they will put their party aside. And so you will have people cross party lines to vote on the gun issue. In fact, you may remember back in 2013, after Colorado passed a slew of gun control, they actually recalled in that district there in Colorado at the state level, they recalled several state senators and kicked them out of office. They were Democrats, and the Democrats in the district were upset with their Democrat senators, and they booted them. So the gun issue is a very powerful issue, and I think it's going to make a big difference here in this election. No president has yet won actively campaigning against our gun rights, and I don't see that changing this year either.
Erich Pratt with Gun Owners of America, Senior Vice President with GOA. Thank you so much for coming on the program. It was great talking with you today. I hope we get a chance to do this again soon.
Thank you, sir. I would love to. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate Erich Pratt joining us here on the program. Normally this is the time where we do the good deed of the day. We do our armed citizen story. We do our recidivist report. But given that this is the 19th anniversary of the attacks on 9/11, I wanted to take just a minute to talk about one of the many, many heroes of that day. I didn't know anybody personally who died on 9/11, but about 4 years ago, almost to the day, actually, I had the opportunity to meet one of those heroes, at least online. His name, Terry O'Hara. He's a member of the New York Police Department, and he contacted me on Twitter shortly after my wife was diagnosed with cancer. Terry was fighting his own fight at that point, and had been fighting for about a year and a half. And he encouraged me, and continued to do so in the months ahead, to stay in the fight. That was one of really his key phrases, that and F cancer. I can't really say what he would say, but I had the opportunity to get to know Terry O'Hara over the coming months. He was a friend. He was a mentor. He gave me strength. He told me that it was okay to be angry, that it was okay to be sad, that it was okay, and in fact necessary, to develop a really dark sense of humor when it came to this incredible battle that he was engaged in, that my wife was engaged in. In February of 2017, less than 6 months after I first met Terry online, he went into the hospital for what would be the last time. He passed away on March 10th of 2017. He had served with the New York Police Department for 11 years. He left behind a wife and 2 children and countless friends and family members who loved him dearly, who were inspired by him, who were given strength watching him in his fight, his courage and his valor. I think touched everybody who knew him. Terry O'Hara died of cancer as a result of him spending so much time at Ground Zero assisting in the search and recovery efforts after 9/11. Like many members of the New York Police Department, the New York Fire Department, and other first responders. The effects of the attacks of 9/11 were not immediately apparent to Terry O'Hara, but he too was a casualty of that terror attack 19 years ago today. And Terry O'Hara is my hero, and he will not be forgotten. We should never forget. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to honor his memory, his life, and his valor. So if you are fighting right now, I'll give you the words of advice that Terry gave me 4 years ago. Stay in the fight. Don't give up. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program. Hope that you have a good weekend. Maybe get a chance to do a little shooting, a little plinking, get out to the range. Fingers crossed. Maybe you can find some ammo. We'll be back on Monday with more of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. But in the meantime, be well, be safe, be free, and we'll see you soon with another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company.